Raad Alkadiri, managing partner at 31032 Associates, sitting there in Washington. Have you stopped believing his Emperor Donald Trump?
Um, Good morning.
Good morning. Good
I
evening, even.
think I think that you have a situation where the two sides have been negotiating past each other for quite considerable time. It's what Omar pointed to. And until you can find a way to bridge those negotiations and bridge the priorities, you're going to be stuck in this impasse. So, for the US, this is about opening the strait. That seems to be the key priority. Now, you have elements within what they're negotiating about the nuclear deal, but they're trying to separate some of those factors and really focus on opening the strait first. I think that's what the Axios memorandum kind of pointed to.
I mean,
For the
given that we
Iranians, there's
failed to get to
potential.
this, Rad, and we're sort of we come out this Monday morning with, the gap between these two. Who only knows how wide it is, but the assumption that it's very wide. In either case, Trump carries this straight into his summit with Xi Jinping now. No resolution. It's the big stink in the room. How does it impact that summit? Does it offer the opportunity for China to be a broker here to get something done? Or how do you see it intersecting with this very critical summit? Starts on Wednesday.
Well, I think Trump has made clear, the administration has made clear that they want to try and get some sort of leverage out of China to open the strait. They want to try and reduce what they see as Chinese help and Chinese support for the Iranians. I mean, those are two sort of issues that they've emphasized as going to be on the agenda. China has leverage, but it can't force the Iranians to give up, and it can't change the nature of these negotiations. And as long as for the Iranians, this is an existential negotiation. As long as some of their existential demands cannot be met, particularly their security demands, as long as there are no guarantees that are incorporated into this, the Iranians are going to continue to use the leverage they have. And they recognize that the key bit of leverage is their hold over the strait. So we do start to sort of, I think military action starts to loom again if you go through the summit and nothing is broken or nothing is changed. And if you start to go into the kind of economic circumstances that Omar is mentioning.
Rad, on that point, I mean, it does seem like the equity markets are giving Trump a big pass here. In some ways, they're kind of confusing the strategy, or like where does the pressure come on him? Because he doesn't seem to be too concerned that you have to pay $5 a gallon for your pickup truck, but as long as the stock market's hitting records, is there pressure on Trump here to concede, to sort of do some kind of a deal? I mean, he would spin anything anyway, but I'm just trying to get an understanding. Is there pressure building in the US, or has he got a pass because the stock markets are at records?
I think Trump tends to look at the stock markets and confuse markets for the economy. But I think from a Republican Party position more generally, and I think it's bipartisan as well, there is pressure. You're beginning to see measures that are being taken, or at least being considered in various states when it comes to gasoline taxes, when it comes to some of the additional measures that can be taken on a taxation side to try and ease that overall price of gasoline, to try and sort of reduce the impact on consumers. I think for those Republicans, they're looking at the midterms, they're looking towards the elections and can see a potential backlash and are concerned about these price rises. For Trump does, the Secretary of Energy has already stated that, a few dollars on a few cents on a barrel of on a gallon of petrol is a price worth paying for the war and sort of what it represents. I think the administration is going to stick to that line. But the closer you get to the midterms, as we get into the summer driving season, and some of the impact is seen, and I think as we get to some of the economic problems starting to manifest in some of the numbers, then there will be pressure. Yeah, but as I say, for this administration, it's going to have to understand if it wants to get a deal, that a deal can't just be about the strait. A deal is going to have to be something more comprehensive if they want to have any sort of listening in Tehran. And it's not clear yet that that message has actually landed.
Does Trump bring anything to China that can compel the Chinese to use some of their muscle here to resolve this? Or does he? Is it a stick that he brings? I mean, it seems that up the last week has been a strange set of sanctioning of Chinese companies and banks. It doesn't seem like the best way to arrive in China if you're looking for some sort of help. Where do you think their leverage is or offer? Is it stick or carrot? What does it look like to you?
It could be a bit of both. I mean, there's clearly sort of, this summit is going to cover a large range of stuff. I mean, remember, this war is happening sort of amidst much bigger geopolitical and geoeconomic changes, transitions, pressures, and US policy and changes in US policy have been fundamental drivers in that. So it's quite clear that, you can have a wider conversation. But it goes back to how China has managed this war. China has managed this war and managed its energy security vulnerabilities very well. And it's eased the pressure that might be there on Beijing to really try and force Iran's hand. I still have questions about whether Beijing could actually force Iran's hand in this case. I mean, equally, the question is, what is it that Beijing brings in sticks and carrots to Tehran to convince it to convince the Iranians to give up the strongest weapon they have, and that weapon is control over the strait.
Raad, I mean, Trump goes to China for the first head of state summit of his second term with the Chinese. There seems to be cross-party consensus in the U.S. to kind of keep the boot on the neck of China, or at least something like that sort of metaphor. That there is a overarching view that it's our nemesis. Where is that posture filtering into this? An expectation, I mean, across all sectors, not just energy, but what sort of expectation is there within the body politic of Washington for this summit?
I think they're looking at this summit sort of in a slightly different fashion to sort of simply the strait. I mean, that issue is obviously going to be there. There's been some reporting that Trump wanted some sort of resolution before he got there so that it didn't overshadow the summit. I think this is, as you put it, this is about, G2 power. This is about looking at your strategic adversary, talking to your strategic adversary and sort of working out what elements can be worked out and what elements are going to be the source of competition in the future. So, I mean, I think Trump wants to go there, wants to project strength, certainly wants to try and get some deals in terms of Chinese purchases of US goods, some support in the agriculture sector, etc. There's some talk of setting up these bodies that will manage investment and that will manage trade. And you can see the sort of the issues, the bigger issues of the sort of rewiring the global trade network as being critical, and dealing with the issues of trade tensions between the two countries. That's going to be as important for Trump, probably more important for Trump than Iran is going to be. And Iran is an irritant, and it's an irritant that is now clearly not going to go away between now and when Trump gets there. So there'll be an element of it being overshadowed. There'll be one of those questions he's constantly asked. It will come up in discussion. But there are some much deeper seated issues here. And as you say, there's bipartisan support in the US for putting pressure on China and for trying to contain China's influence. I think the big question will be, does Trump come away from China? Does he come away from Beijing having put in place the basis of this G2 world, this spheres of influence world? Does that dominate the narrative? Does that dominate the discussion? And if that's the case, then it will push Iran off the front page a little bit, not entirely because of all of the economic issues that go with it,
I've
but whether
struggled with
Trump
that
tries
sort
to
of
pivot.
that I've struggled a bit with that area, the geographic area of influence, the Western Hemisphere thing. How does Taiwan fit into the logic of that? Because obviously Taiwan is not in the Western Hemisphere.
I
I
think
mean,
this goes to the point that you've been making this morning, which is, is Taiwan up for grabs? And I think one of the concerns amongst, certainly some in the US body politic or amongst Congress is that, Xi is going to seek some sort of deal on Taiwan, that is going to be a piece that he pushes Trump on to try and as a cost for some of Trump's other asks and other wants. But it's very clear that if you go to that kind of world, that spheres of influence, then it is a U.S. retreat from Taiwan. They can dress it up with arms sales and anything else, and dress it up with rhetoric. But this is an acknowledgement, or it would be an acknowledgement, that the Western Hemisphere is where the U.S. plays, and Asia is there for the Chinese to take.
just to quickly get your thoughts on where Trump's sort of independent decision making vis-a-vis Iran is versus Israel, which of course is part of this war, though it has drifted quietly into the Lebanese mountains. But it is ultimately, we had Benjamin Netanyahu on the Sunday talk shows in Washington yesterday, very timely, indicating that this war isn't over. What are your thoughts on that influence, Trump's ability to disregard Bibi Netanyahu, the sort of Zionist, Greater Israel agenda, etc.? Where do you see that intersection in making this resolution or making a deal with Iran difficult?
I think you can read Bibi's comments in a number of ways, but one way is that, it's another effort by his government and by him to disrupt the talks with Iran. There are two wars going on in the Middle East. There have been two wars going on in the Middle East since February the 28th. One is this long-term war between Israel and its adversaries that isn't going to go away with any deal that Trump signs unless Trump can provide security guarantees. That's what the Iranians are worried about. It's probably less a renewed strike by the United States, and it's more this continued strike and this continued pressure from Israel. Trump has been able to keep Bibi on the sidelines, as you said, for a period of time. But, I go back to last summer's events and the war in June, which, this war from an Israeli perspective is very much a continuation of, until the Iranians can get some sort of understanding from a US administration that Washington's role is to keep Israel in check, then I think they're going to be reluctant to sign on to anything long term. And that's going to be a hard ask, because Netanyahu has shown time and again that, when he wants to act, and when Israel wants to act, it will disregard everything, Trump included.